I don't know. Is there more? Like, I don't know. I think that's.
He broke my arm. The first time he broke my ribs, he broke 3 of them. The second time, he only broke 1. He broke my nose. He gave me black eyes. He stabbed me with a knife. He choked me multiple times until I passed out. And I had bruises on my neck. And it was really bad. It was 7 times that I had photos of that I could prove with x-rays and things like that. But in the year, I would say it happened 200 times. But I didn't tell anybody about it. A couple of therapists bit parts, about verbal abuse. But I was too scared to tell anybody until January. And then at that point, I went to get a restraining order, ended up talking to the police, and then he was charged in Ontario for 7 counts of assault, including one with a weapon. But he was in Newfoundland. So really, every day I thought that he's going to get picked up, but they don't just go get them when they're far away. He wasn't an immediate threat to me, but as soon as I actually told the police about it, I was worried every day he was going to find out and come here and try to kill me because he was really dangerous. Like I was in a spell. I was convinced that I needed this guy. He told me that no one else would love me, that, he was this, we were meant to be together, but he just kept trying to isolate me. He wanted me to move to Newfoundland. He didn't want me to talk to my friends. Like, he wanted to move to a house in the forest where it was just us. Like, he just wanted me alone. The physical abuse is what they go to jail for, and it's the thing that people seem to focus on a lot, and it was bad, but it would be something that would happen and then it heals. Ribs heal, black eyes heal. It's terrible. But the verbal abuse was worse. Well, there's an amazing group at Thrive in Burlington called Healing Hearts. It was an 8-week program. It was, it was life-changing. It was really, really helpful. We dealt with a different subject every week, and, the ones with trauma, like, I cried a lot. A lot of people cried a lot. Like, it's very hard. And it was especially hard hearing other people's stories, because I don't know, people have just been through so much, and a lot of them, like, something like this happens, and it happens for years, and they're really not protected. Someone goes to jail for a little bit of time and then leaves, and then they still have access to their children, or they get a slap on the wrist, or restraining orders expire. Like, it's just, I never thought it was like that. I thought if you hurt a stranger on the street, like if you do what he did to me in a year, one time to a stranger on the street, you'd go to jail for 10 years or more. I want him to go to a mandatory abusers program, and I think the only way that he would ever do that would be in prison. He's never going to do it on his own. We talked about it when we were still talking, and he said it was embarrassing. Apparently it's not embarrassing beating women, but it's embarrassing going and getting help for it. So no, I think he needs to go to a mandatory abusers program, and I think he needs to serve prison time. There needs to be actual consequences to doing this, not to just me, but I'm sure there are others, and
retired trial lawyer. I've been a trial lawyer for 48 years, and I was this lady's defense attorney during the trial, and about which the book Beyond Terror was written. The The story is inspired by real events. It brings a real enlightenment of the spousal abuse syndrome in the abusive home environment and the probable life-threatening consequences where professional help is not sought or is unavailable. The story will cause the audience to understand the dangerous changes in personality that can occur following a closed head injury, also experienced by NFL football players diagnosed with concussions. Also involved in this story is alcoholism and how it plays out in a dysfunctional home. On average, 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. In a span of 1 year, this equates to 20 million men and women. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence. Those statistics are brought by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. The audience is going to recognize the roles family members play in a dysfunctional home and the rules that they follow, trying to stay safe, which perpetuates and enables the continuation of the dysfunction. The audience will recognize that alone, they're powerless to change how their partner thinks or feels without professional help. The non-abusive spouse is destined to experience continued abusive treatment from the abusive spouse if nothing changes. They must do something different than they've historically done if they're going to have any hopes of surviving the abuse. The audience will witness the ultimate non-effective confrontation of the wife, in this case, attempting to get her drunken husband out of the house until he can sober up. She, having been beaten many times, refused to be beaten again. She has previously suffered a fractured skull, a broken arm, 3 broken ribs, and 2 heart attacks attributed to the abuse situation with her husband. On September 22, 1984, the husband, John, had assaulted her numerous times, threatening to kill her and other family members and then commit suicide. She, having a small caliber rifle at her right hip, intended only to scare him, but when he charged her, reaching for the rifle, the shot was fired, killing him, but saving her life, the life of her brother, and the life of their 17-year-old son. In this particular case, the jury, the trial, the jury selection took almost 2 weeks, and because we examined every potential juror in chambers on the record and under oath, subject to cross-examination, out of the presence of other prospective jurors. And this was done to ensure that we had truthful answers and that the answers were not known to other juror members. The prosecution's theory of the case was that Jean was at the threshold of the bedroom door with a rifle that she pointed at her husband as he sat on the bed 5 feet away and aimed the rifle in a downward direction. But the theory of the defense is that John Davis was assaultive against all family members, was drunk and threatening to kill them all, and that Jean did not intend to kill John, but wanted him to leave the house until he could sober up. Possessing a rifle at her right hip, pointing in an upward direction, only to convince him to leave the home, refusing to be beaten again, when he rushed her, threatening to take the gun and kill them all. Jean's intent was to stop him from getting the gun when the shot was fired. The bullet on its way to the body struck John in the upper left chest. The trajectory of the bullet on its way to the body was upward, striking a rib and going downward on the inside of John's body. Okay. With the muzzle of the gun only 12 to 18 inches distance from the shirt worn by the victim, David realized that the only way to successfully defend this case was to disprove, or at least present credible ballistic evidence challenging the findings of the Michigan State forensic ballistic testimony. It was clear to David that their ballistic expert focused only on the downward trajectory of the fatal bullet on the inside of John's body and did not consider the trajectory of the bullet on its way to the body, which could support Jean's statement that John was on his feet charging her at a very short distance when the shot was fired, leaving gunpowder residue at the entrance wound and making a downward trajectory after striking a rib in the upper chest of John Davis. It was clear to me that I would need a ballistic expert to conduct ballistic testing to provide evidence that would support Jean's version of the facts, raising a reasonable doubt as to the prosecution's theory in the case. I called a professor of ballistic teaching at California State University in Sacramento, California, who agreed to conduct new ballistic testing of the rifle and determine distance and bullet trajectory, and traveled to Michigan to testify in Jean's trial. Next, I contacted a psychiatrist in Lansing, Michigan, who once examined and later testified in a trial where a wife had killed her husband by pouring kerosene around his bed as he was sleeping off a drunken stupor and lit the house afire. The psychiatrist had found her to be temporarily insane, and the jury acquitted her. But he did not find Jean to be insane. He testified that at the instant the shot was fired, she was in dire fear for her life, beyond terror. And lastly, I wanted to have an expert in domestic violence to help the jury to understand domestic violence and specifically the spousal abuse syndrome, and determine if the principles of the dysfunction were at play in the lives of Jean and John on the night in question that might help the jury to understand the dynamics of the syndrome and how it impacted Jean's perception of events on the evening that she shot her husband. The psychologist agreed to see Jean and to testify if her testimony was thought to be helpful. I felt thankful that I had located and selected 3 expert witnesses having good credentials who could come to the trial and testify. After a long trial, about a month trial, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty of first-degree murder, not guilty of second-degree murder, not guilty of voluntary manslaughter, but guilty of negligent discharge of a firearm with death resulting. Jean was sentenced to 6 months to 15 years in a woman's prison in downstate Michigan. But I petitioned the judge because of her poor health to release her. And the judge ordered her release after just 40 days and ordered that she be driven home the following morning in a prison van. She called her son before leaving the prison and was so excited at the prospect of seeing her 17-year-old son again and being a good mother for him. It was about 3 p.m. the next day when they arrived at her country home in the farming country and trudged through 8 inches of snow to reach the rear kitchen door, whereupon she called out, "Robert, honey, I'm home," and was just about to call his name again when Robert entered the kitchen carrying a high-powered rifle and said to his mother, "Hi, Ma. Welcome home. I've been waiting for you. You shouldn't have shot Dad," and raised the rifle and shot his mother through the chest, blowing a hole the size of a grapefruit, killing her instantly. As Robert looked at his mother laying on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood, he bolted from the kitchen door while sobbing aloud and ran across the snow-covered 40 acres in the rear of their house in his stocking feet. And he ran to a brush pile where Dad had once hidden from the police. He sat on the snow-covered brush pile and placed the muzzle of the rifle in his mouth, and with the aid of his stick, pushed the trigger, blowing his head and brains all over the snow-covered brush pile. The story ends with heavier snow filling the air and falling on Robert's body as it lay on a brush pile after fulfilling the threats of his father.